My phone rang at 7:12 a.m. Dad, Grandpa died last night. My daughter's voice was cold, flat. The funeral's Friday. He left everything to me and my husband. You get nothing. I heard my son-in-law laugh in the background, sharp, cruel. Finally, him added. You're out. I didn't argue. I didn't hang up. I switched to speaker because Grandpa was sitting right next to me at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, very much alive. He leaned toward the phone, but just as he opened his mouth to say one word, I'm really grateful you're here and giving this story your time. Before we go on, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Drop a comment below so we can connect across different places and experiences. And just so you know, this story contains some dramatized details created for education and reflection. Any resemblance to real names or contexts is coincidental, but the lesson itself is sincere and valuable. My phone rang at 7:12 a.m. when Dad, Grandpa died last night. My daughter's voice was cold, flat. The funeral's Friday. He left everything to me and my husband. You get nothing. I heard my son-in-law laugh in the background, sharp, cruel. Finally, she added. You're out. I didn't argue. I didn't hang up. I switched to speaker because Grandpa was sitting right next to me at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, very much alive. He leaned toward the phone and said one word. Sarah. Silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. What? Her voice cracked. What are you? Just I'm sitting right here, Grandpa said calmly. At Richard's kitchen table, drinking my coffee. Very much alive. More silence. I could hear muffled voices, Sarah talking to someone, probably Brandon, frantic, angry. This is insane, she said, finally her tone shifting. Dad, I don't know what kind of game you and Grandpa are playing, but I got a call from the hospital last night. They said what? Grandpa's voice was sharp now. What hospital, Sarah? She hesitated. Denver Presbyterian, the ICU. They said you collapsed, that you were in critical condition. I haven't been to Denver Presbyterian in 5 years, Grandpa said. So whoever called you was lying, and you didn't bother to verify it before calling Richard to tell him I was dead and that he'd been cut out of the will. She stammered. I was told to by who? Grandpa leaned closer to the phone. Who told you I died, Sarah? Another long pause. Then her voice turned cold again. This is ridiculous. I'm not playing this game. If you're not dead, fine. But don't accuse me of what? Grandpa asked quietly. Of lying, of celebrating, of trying to claim an inheritance before the body's even cold. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long moment, my heart pounding in my chest. Grandpa set his coffee down carefully. She knew, he said quietly. She knew I wasn't dead. That whole call was scripted. She was testing to see if you'd believe it, or setting up an alibi, I said. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. If something actually happened to you, she could claim she was confused, that she got bad information, that it was all a misunderstanding. Grandpa nodded slowly. Smart. Cruel, but smart. I set the phone down on the table, my hands trembling. Thank God Daniel wasn't on that call. My son was in Seattle battling early-stage Parkinson's and raising 2 kids, Emma and Liam. He didn't need to hear his sister's cruelty. He didn't need to know what she'd become. Margaret had always said Daniel had the heart of an angel. Too kind, too trusting. Especially when it came to his older sister. What do we do? I asked. Grandpa reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small digital voice recorder. Red light blinking. We document everything. Every call, every lie, every threat. Because this isn't over. This is just the beginning. He pressed stop on the recorder. The red light blinked off. Margaret warned me about this, he said quietly. 3 years ago before she died. She told me Sarah was asking questions about the estate, about the will, about how much everything was worth. She said Sarah would come after us eventually. His jaw tightened. I didn't want to believe her. But Margaret was right. What else did she say? Grandpa looked at me for a long moment. She said to protect you, no matter what it cost. Because Sarah wouldn't stop until she had everything. He stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the Denver skyline. The morning sun was just starting to break through the clouds. Not call Patricia Anderson, he said. Tell her we need to meet. Today. Patricia, I asked. The estate attorney. What estate and elder law? Grandpa corrected. If Sarah's planning what I think she's planning, we're going to need someone who knows how to fight dirty. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Patricia's number. Before I could dial, a notification popped up at the top of the screen. Email, 6:47 a.m. First Colorado Bank. Fraud alert, unauthorized access attempt. My stomach dropped. Grandpa, I said quietly, check your email. He pulled out his phone. His face went pale as he read the screen. 3 banks, he said. 3 fraud alerts. All from this morning. We looked at each other. Sarah hadn't been testing. She'd been executing. I followed his silent instruction without hesitation. My thumb found the button, and suddenly Sarah's voice wasn't just in my ear anymore. It filled the small kitchen sharp and clear against the morning quiet. My father leaned back in his chair, hands folded on the table in front of him, watching my phone like it was a witness taking the stand. And hello, are you there or are you too busy crying? The words hung in the air between us. My father's expression didn't change. He just reached for his coffee mug and took a slow sip, his eyes never leaving the phone. Sarah continued, and I could hear the shift in her tone, now less sharp, more practiced, like she'd rehearsed this part. Look, I know this is hard, but Grandpa was old. It was his time. And honestly, the way he'd been spending money lately on you supporting your little apartment, your little life, it wasn't sustainable. My little life. She'd said it again, and this time it echoed through the speakerphone for both of us to hear. My father set his mug down with deliberate care. The thing is, Sarah went on, and now I could hear papers rustling on her end. We need to move quickly. The estate attorney says we can have everything transferred within 30 days if there's no contest. And there won't be, because Grandpa made his wishes very clear. Brandon's voice cut in closer to the phone now. We're listing the Evergreen house by end of week. $2.1 million. Lisa Parker from Parker Mountain Realty is already drawing up the listing. Says with 40 acres and that view it'll sell fast. $2.1 million. The number felt obscene in the context of this moment, as if the only thing that mattered about that property was its market value. Not the 40 years my mother had spent there. Not the wildflowers she'd planted along the fence line every spring. Not the creek where my father had taught me to tie a fly when I was 7 years old. Just a number. Just another asset to be liquidated. Mountain properties are hot right now. Brandon continued, warming to his subject. We might even get a bidding war, and the commercial building downtown. That's the real prize. Do you even know what that thing's worth, Richard? I bet you don't. Your old man kept that one quiet. I felt my spine straighten. Downtown building. My father caught my eye and gave the slightest shake of his head. Not yet. Don't react yet. Sarah's voice came back softer now, almost kind. Dad, I know you're probably upset, but you have to understand Grandpa wanted it this way. He wanted his assets to go to someone who would actually do something with them. Someone who has ambition, vision. You've always been content with just existing. And that's fine. But it's not what he wanted for his legacy. The cruelty of it was almost elegant. She'd found a way to make my father's death about my failures, to frame this theft as somehow righteous. as if she were honoring his wishes instead of counting his money before anyone had even confirmed he was gone. My father reached into the breast pocket of his flannel shirt. The movement was unhurried, almost casual, but something in it made the air in the kitchen feel charged. He pulled out a small black device no bigger than a deck of cards and set it on the table between us. A digital voice recorder, the kind attorneys use for depositions. A small red light blinked steadily on its face had been blinking, I realized now, since before Sarah's call had even come through. He'd been recording from the start. Sarah was still talking, her voice coming through the speaker with that false gentleness she'd perfected. "We'll make sure you're taken care of, obviously. We're not heartless. Maybe we can help you find a smaller place, something more affordable. Brandon knows some landlords who—" "Hello, Sarah." My father's voice cut through hers like a blade through water. Simple. Calm. 2 words that shouldn't have had the power to stop the world, but somehow did. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of shock, of comprehension, of the sound of a carefully constructed lie collapsing. I counted the seconds in my head. 1, 2, 3. Then a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Grandpa. Sarah's voice had lost all its practiced composure. It came out thin, uncertain. "That's... How are you?" "Where?" In the background, I heard movement, something clattering, maybe Brandon dropping his phone or knocking something over. Then his voice high and tight with panic. "Wait, what? He's there. He's at Richard's." More sounds. Frantic whispering. Sarah's voice muffled now, like she'd covered the microphone. "You said the hospital confirmed." Brandon's voice louder. "They did. I saw the—" More whispers. A door closing. Then silence as they scrambled to regroup. My father picked up the sealed envelope he'd tapped earlier, the one with the attorney's letterhead. He held it up at eye level between us, not opening it, just acknowledging its presence. Then he set it down next to the recording device, creating a small tableau of evidence on the worn kitchen table. When Sarah's voice came back, it had found some of its steadiness, but I could hear the cracks underneath. "Grandpa, thank God. We thought we got a call last night that you'd—" "No, you didn't." 2 words again, just as calm, just as final. My father leaned toward the phone, his voice carrying that particular quality it had when he was done entertaining nonsense. "You didn't get a call, Sarah. You made one. Or rather, Brandon made several. To 3 different banks. All between 6:47 and 7:04 this morning. All trying to report my death. All before you called your father to deliver the news. I watched my daughter's facade crumble in real time, though I could only hear it, not see it." The silence on the other end was different now, not shocked, but calculating. She was trying to find the angle, the explanation, that would make this make sense. "Keep talking." My father said, his hand resting on the recording device. "Richard and I are listening, and so is this." He tapped the recorder once. "Every word you've said this morning, every claim, every threat, every lie. It's all right here. Evidence." The red light continued its steady blink, patient and impartial, marking each second of silence that followed like a countdown to something inevitable. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for exactly 2 heartbeats. Then Sarah's voice returned, but the venom had drained out of it, replaced by something that might have fooled a stranger. "Grandpa. Oh, thank God." Her tone dripped with false relief. We thought something had happened. Brandon and I have been so worried." "Save it." Grandpa William's voice cut through her performance like a scalpel through skin. He hadn't moved from his chair, hadn't so much as shifted his coffee mug. The only change was the faint tightening around his eyes. "I know exactly what you thought, Sarah. And I know exactly what you've been doing." I watched my father's face as he spoke. 86 years old, and in that moment he looked like a judge handing down a sentence. "I don't know what you mean." Sarah's voice had gone careful, now measured. "Dad and I were just concerned about the estate planning. You're not getting any younger, and we wanted to make sure." "Make sure of what?" Grandpa leaned forward slightly, his eyes fixed on the phone between us. "Not make sure I signed the right documents. Is that what you were doing at Denver General last Tuesday, October 8th? Another beat of silence, longer this time. I felt my chest tighten. Last Tuesday. The day Grandpa had gone in for his colonoscopy prep. He'd asked me to drive him, but I'd had that meeting with the contractor about the Evergreen Properties fence line. Sarah had volunteered, said she wanted to spend time with him. "I was there to support you," Sarah said, but her voice had lost some of its smoothness. "You were anxious about the procedure." "I was sedated," Grandpa said flatly. "Mild twilight anesthesia, the kind that makes you comfortable but leaves you just alert enough to sign documents if someone puts a pen in your hand." My stomach dropped. That's when he showed up. Grandpa continued his tone, never rising, never losing that cold, measured control. "Your friend. Brandon's college buddy. The one you introduced as a lawyer who happened to be visiting a patient on the same floor." I heard a muffled sound on the other end of the line. Brandon, probably. Trying to say something. Sarah shut him up with a hiss I could just barely make out. "His name is Ethan Miller," Grandpa said. "Though I doubt that's what he told the hospital staff. He came into my recovery bay at 2:47 p.m. You were right there with him, Sarah. You told the nurse I was your father, which was your first mistake, because the nurse knew damn well I only have one son." I stared at the table. The sealed envelope sat there cream-colored and unmarked next to the digital recorder with its blinking red light. Evidence, Grandpa had said. Every word. The nurse didn't say anything at the time. Grandpa went on, "But she made a note in my chart, and when I came out of the sedation an hour later and asked what I'd signed, she showed me the notation. Patient appeared confused. Signed document presented by daughter and visitor claiming to be attorney. Did not witness signature. Notation made for patient protection. That's ridiculous." Sarah's voice had gone sharp again, defensive. "If you're trying to say I'm not trying to say anything. I'm telling you what happened." Grandpa's fingers tapped once against the table, a single deliberate beat. "You handed me a power of attorney document, a durable POA, that gave you and Brandon full control over my financial affairs, including the authority to sell property access accounts and make medical decisions on my behalf." Ethan Miller stood there in his cheap suit and his fake briefcase and told me it was standard estate planning, while I was still groggy enough to believe him. I felt something cold crawling up my spine. A POA durable. That would have given Sarah everything. Access to Grandpa's accounts, the evergreen land, the downtown property. But here's the thing, Sarah. Grandpa's voice dropped lower, quieter, and somehow that made it worse. The hospital has cameras, every recovery bay, every hallway, and when I requested the footage 2 days later, there you were. Clear as day. You Brandon's friend Ethan and a document with a forged signature. That's a lie. Sarah's voice cracked just slightly on the last word. We were just trying to help. Ethan Miller confessed 4 days ago, Grandpa said, to a notary investigator from the Colorado Secretary of State's office. He admitted you paid him $3,000 to impersonate an attorney, present the document, and witness a signature that I never actually gave. He admitted the signature on that POA was traced from a previous document. And he admitted that when he realized the state was investigating, he decided cooperation was a better option than a felony fraud charge. The air in the room felt thick. I realized I'd been holding my breath. $3,000, Grandpa repeated softly. That's what you paid to try and steal an $8 million estate. We weren't stealing anything. Sarah's voice exploded through the speaker, all pretense gone now. We were protecting family assets. You're 86 years old, Grandpa. You're not competent to manage this kind of wealth anymore. Someone had to step in before what? Grandpa's voice was ice. Before I gave it all to Richard. Before I put it in a trust you couldn't touch. Is that what this is about? You don't understand. Sarah was breathing hard now, her words coming fast and ragged. Brandon and I have sacrificed everything to stay close to this family. We've put our lives on hold. Our careers, your careers. Grandpa let out a short, humorless laugh. Brandon hasn't held a job in 4 years. And the last time you worked, Sarah, you were fired for falsifying expense reports. Don't talk to me about sacrifice. That's not fair. Fair. Grandpa's hand came down flat on the table, a single sharp crack that made me flinch. You want to talk about fair? You tried to forge my signature while I was sedated in a hospital bed. You bribed a man to impersonate an attorney. You violated my trust, my dignity, and the law. And you did it because you thought I was too old and too trusting to notice. Silence. Then quietly, almost gently. But I noticed Sarah. I noticed everything. I looked at my father. His face was calm, but his jaw was set in a way I recognized from my childhood. The way it looked when he'd caught me in a lie and was waiting for me to confess. The video is saved, Grandpa said. The notary investigator's report is filed. The forged POA is in evidence. And Ethan Miller's confession is notarized and witnessed. You don't have a case. You never did. You bastard! Sarah's voice was shaking now, but whether from rage or fear I couldn't tell. You set us up. You knew. I knew you'd try, Grandpa said simply. Margaret warned me before she died. She told me to watch you, to protect Richard and the estate, and I did. Margaret, my late wife, dead 3 years now from cancer that ate through her faster than any of us could process. I felt a sharp pang in my chest at the mention of her name. This isn't over, Sarah hissed. You think you're so smart, but there are other ways. Yes, Grandpa said softly. There are, which brings me to my next question. He leaned back in his chair, and for the first time since the call began, I saw something that might have been satisfaction flicker across his face. Pike, is that why you called 3 banks at 6:47 this morning, trying to report me dead? The silence that followed Grandpa's question was absolute. Not the kind of silence where someone is thinking of what to say. The kind where they've been caught and know it. I watched Grandpa's face. He hadn't moved. His coffee sat untouched, cooling in the morning light. The digital recorder's red light continued its steady blink between us, patient and relentless. Grandpa's voice was soft, almost gentle. Would you like to answer that? Nothing. Not even the sound of breathing on the other end. Then quietly, Grandpa reached across the table and slid his phone toward me. Not the one on speaker, his personal cell lying face up beside the recorder. The screen was already lit open to his email inbox. I read them, he said. Out loud. I looked down. 3 emails sat at the top of the list, all flagged in red, all from the same morning. All with subject lines that made my stomach clench. High First Colorado Bank. I read my voice rougher than I intended. Security alert, unauthorized death notification attempt. Received at 6:52 a.m. I glanced up at Grandpa. He nodded once. Keep going. Rocky Mountain Credit Union. Fraud alert, account access request denied. Received at 6:58 a.m. My throat felt tight. Western States Trust. Urgent suspicious activity detected on account ending in 4739. Received at 7:04 a.m. I set the phone down carefully as if it might shatter. All 3 emails, all before Sarah's call at 7:12. Those alerts. Grandpa said, his eyes still fixed on the phone between us. Were triggered when someone called each of those banks this morning. Someone who identified themselves as my daughter and claimed I had passed away during the night. Someone who requested immediate access to account information, including balances and beneficiary details. His voice never rose, never sharpened. It was the tone of a man reading a weather report. Each bank has protocols for death notifications, he continued. They require a death certificate or at minimum a call from a verified next of kin with documented authorization. The person who called this morning had neither. But they did have one thing. He paused. They called from an email address that's been on file with two of those banks for the past 8 months. An email address associated with a joint account I was supposedly setting up for estate planning purposes. Grandpa tapped the phone screen, pulling up one of the alerts. He turned it so I could see the details at the bottom. Request originated from Brandon Mitchell, 1989@gmail.com. My chest went cold. "Gee, Brandon," Grandpa said quietly. "Your son-in-law made those calls, Richard. From his email, from his phone. At 6:47 this morning, he called 3 banks and tried to report me dead." The silence on the other end of the line finally broke. "That's not..." Sarah's voice was strangled, breathless. "That wasn't supposed to..." What?" Grandpa's tone was ice. "Wasn't supposed to get flagged. Wasn't supposed to leave a trail. It was your plan." Brandon's voice exploded through the speaker, raw and panicked. "You told me to call them. You said we had to move fast before anyone else could..." "I did not tell you to use your own email, you idiot!" Sarah's voice cracked high and sharp. "I told you to use a burner. I told you to..." "You told me it didn't matter," Brandon shot back. "You said Grandpa was old, that he wouldn't check his email before noon, that by the time anyone noticed..." "Oh my God, Brandon, do you hear yourself?" Sarah was shouting now, all pretense gone. "You just confessed to wire fraud on a recorded line. You're the one who said..." "I didn't say anything. This was your idea. You're the one who wanted to..." "Why don't you dare pin this on me!" Brandon's voice was ragged. "I'm not going down for this alone, Sarah. If I'm going to jail, you're coming with me because this whole thing was..." The line went dead, not a hang-up, a cut-off. Someone had ended the call mid-sentence, and I didn't know if it was Sarah or Brandon or both of them smashing their phones at the same time. The sudden silence felt louder than the shouting. I stared at the phone on the table. The screen had gone dark. The recorder's light still blinked red and steady, the only movement in the room. Grandpa leaned back in his chair. For the first time since the call began, I saw something that might have been exhaustion flicker across his face. Just for a moment. Then it was gone, replaced by that same calm, measured control. "They're done," he said quietly. I didn't know what to say. My daughter had just screamed a confession of bank fraud over a recorded line. Had just thrown her husband under the bus and been thrown right back. Had just imploded in real time while my father and I listened. I felt sick. "To Grandpa," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "What the hell is happening?" He looked at me, really looked at me the way he used to when I was a kid, and had just asked a question he'd been waiting for. "What's happening?" he said slowly. "Is that your daughter and her husband tried to steal an $8 million estate by faking my death, forging legal documents, and committing wire fraud across state lines." He said it so simply, so plainly, like he was explaining how to change a tire. "The hospital scheme was their first attempt," he continued. "The POA forgery. When that didn't work, when I caught them and filed a complaint, they escalated. They decided that if they couldn't control my assets while I was alive, they'd simply report me dead and try to claim them before anyone could verify." I felt the room tilt slightly, or maybe that was just me. "Shucks, but here's what they didn't know," Grandpa said, And now there was something sharp in his voice, something that cut through the fog in my head. The FBI has been investigating Brandon for 2 weeks. I blinked. What? Yeah, wire fraud, interstate fraud, financial elder exploitation. Grandpa ticked them off on his fingers like a grocery list. Brandon's been running online scams targeting seniors for at least 6 months. Small amounts spread across multiple states. Nothing big enough to draw attention individually, but together. He shrugged. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit has been building a case. They contacted me 12 days ago as part of their investigation. My mouth had gone dry. You've been working with the FBI. Cooperating, Grandpa corrected. They needed documentation, evidence of pattern and intent. I gave them access to my accounts, my email, my phone records, everything. He gestured at the phone on the table. This morning's calls, the bank alerts. That's not just evidence of fraud, Richard. That's evidence of ongoing fraud. Active, documented, with federal witnesses. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. When Sarah called you at 7:12, Grandpa said quietly, she thought she was ahead of the game. She thought Brandon had successfully reported me dead, that the banks were processing the claim, and that all she had to do was play the grieving granddaughter while they moved the assets into accounts she controlled. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine. She didn't know the banks had already flagged the calls as fraudulent. She didn't know Brandon's email had been under federal surveillance for a week. And she sure as hell didn't know I was sitting here alive recording every word she said. The red light blinked. Margaret told me, Grandpa said softly. 3 years ago, right before she died, she told me Sarah had been asking about the estate, about the will, about when I planned to step back from managing things. Margaret said she had a bad feeling, said I should be careful. His voice cracked just slightly on my late wife's name. I didn't believe her, he said. Not completely. Not until Sarah showed up at that hospital with a fake lawyer and a forged document. That's when I knew Margaret had been right. That's when I called the FBI back and told them I'd help with their investigation. I stared at my father, 86 years old, sitting at my kitchen table in his cardigan and reading glasses, talking about federal investigations and wire fraud like he was discussing the weather. So what happens now? I asked. Grandpa picked up his coffee, took a long, slow sip, set it down. Now, he said, we wait for the knock on their door. The silence after the call was suffocating. Grandpa set his phone down on the kitchen table. The screen was still lit, 3 bank fraud alerts glowing like warning flares. Sarah's voice still echoed in my head, shrill and venomous, unraveling into panic as Brandon's recording played through the speaker. I sat frozen, staring at nothing. Richard. Grandpa's voice was gentle. Breathe. I realized I'd been holding my breath. I exhaled slowly, gripped the edge of the table. She tried to kill you, I said. My voice sounded hollow. My daughter tried to have you killed. We don't know that for certain yet, Grandpa said carefully. But the pieces are there. The hospital scheme, the fake death certificate, the banks, and now this. He gestured at his phone. Marcus Webb's warning about the full service package. It's escalating. I closed my eyes. Images flashed through my mind, Sarah at 7 years old sitting on my lap, asking me to read her favorite bedtime story. Sarah at 16 crying in my arms after her first heartbreak. Sarah at 25 standing beside me at Margaret's funeral holding my hand as they lowered the casket into the ground. When had it changed? When had she become this? Margaret knew, I said quietly. Grandpa nodded. She did, and I didn't believe her. My throat tightened. She tried to warn me. She told me Sarah was asking strange questions, that something felt wrong, and I told her she was being paranoid. I said it was the pain medication making her anxious. You were trying to protect your daughter, Grandpa said. That's not a crime. I was blind. You were a father. I opened my eyes and looked at him. When did Margaret tell you? 2 years before she died, Grandpa said. Maybe a little longer. We were sitting on the back porch at Evergreen. She'd just come back from lunch with Sarah. They'd gone to that Italian place downtown, the one Margaret loved. She came home quiet, upset. I asked her what was wrong. He paused, his gaze distant. Shakti, she said Sarah had spent the entire lunch asking about money, about the estate, the properties, the trust accounts. Not, how are you feeling, Mom? Or what did the doctor say? Just numbers. Margaret said it felt like Sarah was taking inventory, calculating. I felt sick. Margaret told me she was scared, Grandpa continued. Not of dying, she'd made peace with that. She was scared of what Sarah would do after she was gone. She said, William, I need you to promise me something. When I'm not here anymore, you have to protect Richard. Sarah will come after him. She'll try to take everything, and he won't see it coming because he loves her too much. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. So I promised. I told her I'd watch, I'd document, I'd be ready. And she started keeping a journal, writing down every conversation, every red flag, every lie, building the case we'd need when the time came. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. She knew it would be this bad. She knew it could be. Grandpa's expression was somber. Margaret said Sarah had been showing signs since childhood. Small things, stealing Christmas money from her cousins when she was 12, forging permission slips in high school, lying about college expenses. Margaret always made excuses for her. We both did, but near the end, she couldn't ignore it anymore. Margaret had worried about Daniel too, I remembered. She'd said it once, maybe a year before she died, when Daniel had flown in from Seattle for a visit. We'd been sitting in the living room, watching Daniel play with his kids, and Margaret had leaned over and whispered, He has the heart of an angel, but he's too gentle when it comes to his sister. She'll use that against him if she gets the chance. I hadn't understood what she meant at the time. Now I did. She was protecting both of us, I said quietly. Me and Daniel. She was protecting everyone she loved, Grandpa said. That's who Margaret was. I looked down at the table. At the phone, the recorder, the fraud alerts. The evidence of my daughter's betrayal laid out like a crime scene. What do we do now? I asked. Grandpa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We finish what Margaret started. We protect the family, and we make sure Sarah doesn't hurt anyone else. I nodded. Outside, the morning sun climbed higher. The city woke up around us, traffic voices, the hum of ordinary life continuing as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. My phone buzzed. An email notification. Parker Mountain Realty, listing confirmation, Evergreen Estate. My blood went cold. Grandpa, I said, turning the screen toward him. She's trying to sell the house. He read the subject line, his jaw tightening. Get your coat, he said, standing. We're going to see Patricia. Now. I didn't open the email, not yet. Instead, I watched as Grandpa reached across the table and slid the manila folder toward me. The one that had been sitting there all morning next to the recorder and the sealed envelope. Cream-colored, unmarked, thick with papers. You read these first, he said quietly. Then the email will make sense. My hands felt numb as I pulled the folder closer. The paper was cool under my fingers, slightly textured. Legal weight. I opened it. Inside were documents arranged in chronological order, each section marked with a yellow tab. Neat. Organized. The work of someone who'd been preparing for this moment. The first tab read, July 2024. Guardianship attempt. I pulled out the papers beneath it. A petition. Legal-sized, dense with text. The header made my stomach clench. In the matter of the guardianship and conservatorship of Richard Michael Stone. My name, in a court filing, requesting that I be declared incompetent to manage my own affairs. "Keep reading," Grandpa said. I scanned the document. Petitioner Sarah Elizabeth Stone. Grounds. Respondent demonstrates significant cognitive decline, major depressive disorder, and inability to manage financial affairs or make sound decisions regarding his welfare and estate. The words blurred together. Cognitive decline. Depressive disorder. My daughter had tried to have me declared legally incompetent. "There's a medical evaluation attached," Grandpa said. Page 4. I flipped forward. There it was. A psychological assessment signed by someone named Dr. James Morrison, Ph.D., licensed clinical psychologist. Except he wasn't. Morrison was a friend of Brandon's. Grandpa said, his voice flat. They met through some online investing forum. He had a doctorate in education, not psychology. No clinical license in Colorado. No license anywhere, actually. He'd been practicing under a fake credential for 3 years in Nevada before the state board caught him. I stared at the signature on the page. The neat, professional letterhead. The detailed evaluation claiming I exhibited marked memory impairment, poor judgment, and depressive symptoms consistent with major cognitive dysfunction. I'd never even met this man. "Sarah scheduled the appointment for you in July," Grandpa continued. "Told you it was for supplemental health insurance. You went to an office in Lakewood, spent 2 hours answering questions. You thought it was bureaucratic nonsense?" I remembered. The waiting room with outdated magazines. The man in the cheap suit who'd asked me about my daily routine, my finances, whether I ever felt confused or forgetful. I'd thought the questions were invasive but harmless. "Morrison wrote that evaluation based on that session," Grandpa said. "Then Sarah filed the guardianship petition the next week. If it had gone through, she would have been appointed your legal guardian. She'd control your bank accounts, your medical decisions, your right to contest my will or access your inheritance. You would have been legally powerless." The paper crumpled slightly in my grip. "How did you stop it?" "Patricia Anderson." Grandpa tapped the next page in the folder. "My attorney. I asked her to review the petition. As a courtesy, told her I wanted to understand what Sarah was claiming. Patricia ran a background check on Morrison. Found out he wasn't licensed. Filed an emergency motion to dismiss and reported him to the district attorney." I looked at the next document. A court order dated August 12, 2024. Petition dismissed with prejudice. Petitioner ordered to show cause why sanctions should not be imposed for filing fraudulent medical evidence. Sarah withdrew before the sanctions hearing, Grandpa said. Claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that Morrison had misrepresented his credentials to her. The judge didn't buy it, but without Morrison, who'd vanished by then, there wasn't enough to file criminal charges against Sarah. I set the July documents down carefully, my hands shaking. "Not that was attempt number 1, Grandpa said. She tried to control you to get to me. I didn't want to look at the next section, but I did." The second tab read, September 15, 2024. Death certificate fraud. I pulled out the papers. Hospital intake forms. A routine checkup scheduled for September 15th, a Friday. Just a blood draw and basic physical. Grandpa's doctor had recommended quarterly monitoring given his age. I asked Sarah to drive me, Grandpa said quietly. I wanted to see what she'd do if given the opportunity. My throat went dry. "You set her up." I gave her a chance to prove me wrong. His eyes met mine, steady and sad. She didn't take it. I kept reading. There was a name circled on the hospital staffing sheet, Jennifer Mason, RN, floor nurse, outpatient services. Jennifer was the nurse who took my vitals that morning, Grandpa said. Sarah asked to speak with her privately while I was in the exam room. Said she had questions about my medication schedule. I had a recording device in my jacket pocket, one of those pens with a built-in mic. It was running. He reached over and tapped a small transcription document clipped to the hospital forms. I read it. Sarah Stone. I need a favor, a big one. There's $5,000 in it for you. Jennifer Mason. What kind of favor? Sarah Stone. My grandfather's going to pass soon. Maybe today, maybe next week. When it happens, I need the paperwork processed quickly, before other family members can interfere. Can you help with that? Jennifer Mason. You want me to issue a death certificate? Sarah Stone. When the time comes, yes. I'll call you. You file the certificate and the money's yours. Cash, no trail. My vision narrowed to a pinpoint. She didn't wait, Grandpa said softly. The next day, September 16th, a Saturday, Jennifer filed a death certificate with Denver County. Listed time of death as 3:17 a.m., cause as cardiac arrest, signed by a Dr. Stevens who was on vacation in Mexico at the time, and whose signature was traced from a previous document Jennifer had access to. I couldn't breathe. The bank alerts went off at 6:42 a.m. Grandpa continued. Similar to what happened yesterday morning, fraud detection, suspicious death notification account, freeze protocols. But this time I was ready. I called Patricia, called the county clerk, called the hospital's compliance office. By noon, Jennifer was in custody. He slid another document toward me. An arrest report dated September 17th. Jennifer Mason, age 34, charged with filing a false instrument forgery and conspiracy to commit fraud. She confessed within 6 hours, Grandpa said. Gave up Sarah, gave up the $5,000. She'd already spent $2,000 of it paying off credit card debt. But here's what made the FBI take notice. He pointed to a paragraph in the police report I'd missed. Subject admits to filing fraudulent death certificates on 4 prior occasions in 3 states, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, between 2021 to 2024. Subject recruited through online platform by individuals seeking to expedite estate settlements and insurance claims. Subject received payments ranging from $3,000 to $7,000 per incident. Jennifer wasn't just a corrupt nurse, Grandpa said. She was part of a network, an interstate fraud ring targeting elderly people with estates. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit had been investigating her for 8 months. When she confessed to Sarah's scheme, they had everything they needed to tie Sarah into a federal case. I stared at the page, trying to process what I was reading. The FBI started active surveillance on Sarah on September 20th. Grandpa said. Phone taps, email monitoring financial records. They contacted me on September 22nd and asked me to cooperate. Said they needed documentation, recorded evidence, a clear pattern of intent. I gave them everything. You've been working with the FBI for 3 weeks. I said numbly. Yes, and Sarah doesn't know. She didn't. Grandpa's expression was grim. Until this morning, when she and Brandon confessed to wire fraud on a recorded line that the FBI is probably already transcribing, I looked down at the documents again. July, September. 2 attempts. 2 failures. October was the 3rd, I said quietly, remembering task 3. The hospital. Ethan Miller. The forged power of attorney. Yes. Grandpa folded his hands on the table. She's escalated each time. July was calculated, try to control you through the courts. September was desperate, try to fake my death while I was still breathing. October was reckless, forged documents while I was sedated and hope no one noticed. And this morning was panic. Grandpa finished. She knew the October scheme had failed, knew Ethan Miller had confessed, knew she was running out of time and options. So she and Brandon tried to report me dead before anyone could stop them, called 3 banks before dawn, and then called you to make it official. He leaned back in his chair, looking suddenly deeply tired. She didn't know the FBI was already watching. Didn't know the banks had flagged Brandon's email. Didn't know I was sitting here recording every word. The morning light had shifted, casting long shadows across the table. The coffee in my mug had gone cold hours ago. The recorder's red light still blinked, patient and relentless. "There's one more thing," Grandpa said quietly. He reached over and tapped my phone, still lying face up on the table where I'd set it down after reading the bank fraud emails. "Now check your email," he said. "The one from last night. Parker Mountain Realty." I picked up the phone with hands that felt like they belonged to someone else. Opened the email app. Found the message. Subject confirmation. Evergreen Estate listing agreement. Sent Monday, 9:47 p.m. From Parker Mountain Realty, Jessica Torres, Senior Agent. I opened it. "Dear Mr. Stone, thank you for authorizing the listing of your property at 4250 Elk Ridge Road, Evergreen, Colorado. Per our phone conversation this afternoon, we have entered the property into MLS with an asking price of $2,100,000. The listing went live at 5 p.m. today. Our first showing is scheduled for Wednesday at 10 a.m., with an open house on Saturday, October 19th, from 1 to 4 p.m. I've attached the signed listing agreement and disclosure forms for your records. Looking forward to a quick sale. Best regards, Jessica Torres." I stared at the screen. "I never authorized this," I said. "No," Grandpa said quietly. "But someone with a forged power of attorney and access to my email account did." The email from Jessica Torres wasn't just a confirmation. It was a package. I scrolled down past the initial message, past the cheerful closing, and the Parker Mountain Realty logo to the attachments section. 3 files. PDFs. I tapped the first one. Listing agreement. 4250 Elk Ridge Road. 23 pages of legal boilerplate. Standard real estate contract. Seller disclosures, commission structure, marketing authorization. I skimmed through it, my eyes catching on the signature page at the end. There it was. A signature that was supposed to be Grandpa's. Neat, steady, completely unlike his actual handwriting. And beside it, a date. October 10th, 2024. My blood went cold. "Grandpa," I said quietly. What were we doing on October 10th? He didn't even have to think about it. Thursday morning. We drove to Patricia Anderson's office in Cherry Creek, spent 3 hours going over estate documents and setting up contingency protocols in case Sarah tried something else after the September incident. Patricia's secretary made us lunch. We didn't leave until 2:30. I looked at the signature again. October 10th, supposedly signed at 4:15 p.m. according to the notary stamp below it. "We were together all day," I said. "We have an alibi. We have more than that." Grandpa reached over and pulled his phone toward him, tapping through his photo gallery. He turned the screen toward me. A selfie, him and me and Patricia Anderson, in her conference room, the three of us holding coffee mugs, a wall clock visible in the background, showing 1:47 p.m. Patricia insisted on taking this, said we should document the day for exactly this reason. I stared at the photo. Proof. Time-stamped, geotagged, witnessed. "They forged another power of attorney," I said numbly. "Even after Jennifer got arrested. Even after they knew the FBI was involved. They just kept going." Desperation," Grandpa said simply. "When the first 3 attempts failed, they had to move faster. Get the property listed, get offers coming in, create momentum that would be harder to stop." I opened the second attachment. A copy of the forged POA itself. It was elaborate notary seal witness signatures. Legal language about granting Sarah Elizabeth Stone full authority to act on behalf of William Charles Stone in all matters pertaining to real property located in Jefferson County, Colorado. The notary's name was Lisa Chen. I Googled her on my phone. The Colorado Secretary of State's website showed her license had been suspended 3 months ago. for notarizing documents without proper identification verification. They used a suspended notary, I said, on a document dated 2 weeks ago. Jessica Torres probably didn't check, Grandpa said. Why would she? A daughter bringing in paperwork to sell her elderly father's property, it looks routine. She had no reason to suspect fraud. I felt a wave of exhaustion crash over me. How many people had Sarah pulled into this? How many fake documents, bribed officials, forged signatures? But here's what you need to understand, Grandpa said, and his tone shifted, became heavier. The Evergreen property isn't the real target. I looked up from the phone. It's worth 2.1 million, I said. That's not enough. It's not about enough. Grandpa pushed his chair back slightly and folded his hands on the table. Richard, there's something I haven't told you yet. Another property. The air in the room seemed to thicken. I bought a commercial building in downtown Denver 20 years ago, he said. Right after your mother passed away. It was an investment, something to generate income that didn't require active management. Something I could pass down to you without it becoming a burden. He pulled out his phone again, brought up a photo. A 6-story building, brick and glass, modern renovation over historic bones. The address displayed at the bottom, 1450 17th Street. A Lodo, I said quietly. Lower downtown Denver. Prime real estate. The building has ground floor retail and 5 floors of office space, Grandpa continued. It's fully leased. Has been for years, generates about $80,000 a month in rental income after expenses. I did the math in my head. $80,000 a month, nearly $1 million a year. The property's current market value, Grandpa said, is about $14.8 million. The number hung in the air between us. $14.8 million. Suddenly, the Evergreen estate, 2.1 million 40 acres, the mountain house I'd grown up visiting, seemed almost quaint by comparison. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Because I wanted to protect you from exactly this. Grandpa gestured at the documents spread across the table. The building is held in an LLC, Stone Mountain Properties. The ownership structure is intentionally complicated, multiple layers, a trust. As the managing member, your name and mine buried in paperwork that would take a forensic accountant weeks to untangle. He leaned forward. Margaret knew about it. Near the end, when she was lucid, she'd talk about how grateful she was that I'd set it up that way. Said it would keep you safe if anything ever happened to me. Said you'd have income, security, independence. My throat tightened at the mention of Margaret again. Everything kept coming back to her warnings, her foresight, her attempts to protect us even from beyond the grave. But Sarah knew too, I said quietly. I think so. Grandpa's jaw tightened. Margaret might have mentioned it during one of those lunches 5 years ago, or Sarah found documents when she was snooping through my study at the Evergreen house. She had access opportunities. I can't prove she knows about the downtown property, but her behavior suggests she does. I thought about it. The escalating schemes, the desperation, July's guardianship attempt. If Sarah controlled me, she could access anything I inherited. September's fake death certificate. If Grandpa was legally dead, his assets would go to probate, and Sarah could position herself as the primary heir. October's hospital, POA, direct control over Grandpa's affairs and property decisions. And now the Evergreen listing. Not because $2 million was the prize, but because it was a test run. A way to establish that Sarah had authority to sell Grandpa's property. Once the Evergreen sale went through, once she'd proven she could execute a real estate transaction with the forged POA, the downtown building would be next. $14.8 million. That was what this was really about. She could list the downtown property, I said slowly, working through it. Use the same fake POA. Find a commercial broker, claim you'd authorized her to handle the sale. At $14 million, even a 10% undermarket sale would net her over $13 million. and with me declared dead via fake death certificate. Grandpa added, she could forge probate documents, claim the LLC passed to her as next of kin, sell the building, and disappear with the money before anyone noticed the fraud. By the time the courts untangled it, she'd be in a country without extradition treaties. I felt sick. This wasn't about greed, I said. This was about escape. She and Brandon are buried in debt, probably legal exposure from his online scams, and they needed enough money to vanish completely. Start over somewhere else. 14 million would do that. Grandpa nodded slowly. I think you're right. We sat in silence for a moment. The morning light streamed through the kitchen window, warm and ordinary, completely at odds with the conversation we were having. So what do we do? I asked finally. Grandpa picked up his phone, started scrolling through his contacts. There's a fourth attempt, he said quietly. I found out yesterday afternoon. Sarah filed something at the courthouse Friday, October 11th. I don't have all the details yet, but Patricia got a courtesy call from the clerk's office yesterday morning. There's a hearing scheduled. My stomach dropped. What kind of hearing? Emergency probate petition. Grandpa's face was grim. Sarah's trying to have me declared legally dead and have herself appointed as emergency administrator of my estate. She's using the September fake death certificate that was supposedly corrected as evidence that there's confusion about my status, and claiming immediate family emergency requires expedited probate to protect assets. That's insane, I said. You're sitting right here, which is why we need Patricia, now. He looked at his watch. It was 7:42 in the morning. Her office opens at 8:30. We need to be there when the doors unlock. If Sarah's petition goes forward, if a judge grants even temporary authority, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. If Sarah got emergency probate authority even for a few days, she could sell everything. Evergreen, the downtown building, liquidate accounts, transfer assets. By the time the court realized she'd used fraudulent documents, the money would be gone. Call Patricia, no, I said. Grandpa was already dialing. The drive downtown took 20 minutes through morning traffic. Grandpa sat silent in the passenger seat. Hands folded, the manila folder resting on the console beside his phone and that blinking recorder. I'd thrown on a jacket and left without breakfast. The coffee in my travel mug went cold, untouched. Downtown Denver at 8 a.m. was brake lights and construction. I took Spear Boulevard, cutting through morning glare, bouncing off high-rises. Patricia's office was on 17th Street. Not far from Grandpa's commercial property, I realized, sandwiched between a bank and corporate headquarters. I parked in the adjacent garage, 3rd level. Our footsteps echoed through dim concrete as we walked to the elevator. Neither of us spoke. 14th floor. The doors opened onto neutral carpet and brass placards. Anderson and Associates. Estate planning and elder law. The glass door was unlocked. Small waiting area, empty reception desk. And beyond that, an open office where Patricia Anderson stood at a conference table, papers spread like a battle map. She looked up as we entered. Patricia was late 50s, steel gray hair in a sharp bob, reading glasses perched on her nose. Navy suit, no jewelry except a watch. Her office was organized chaos, file boxes stacked against walls, legal pads covered in notes, laptop glowing on the conference table. William, Richard, no pleasantries. Shut the door. I did. How bad? Grandpa asked. She gestured at the papers. Worse than I thought. Sit. We sat. She pushed a thick document across the table. Legal filing, blue backing sheet, court seal. In the matter of the guardianship of William Charles Stone. Petitioner Sarah Elizabeth Stone. My chest tightened. Filed Monday afternoon. Patricia said, tapping the date stamp. October 14th, 4:30 p.m. I got a courtesy call from the courthouse yesterday. Clerk recognized your name. What's she claiming? Grandpa's voice was steady, but his jaw tightened. Patricia flipped pages. Advanced dementia. Confusion, disorientation, inability to manage affairs. That Richard is exploiting you isolated you from family controls, finances, exercising undue influence to cut Sarah out. That's insane, I said. It's calculated. She pulled out another page. She provided witness affidavits. Robert Caldwell and Michael Torres. Both claim they've observed William's decline over 6 months. She slid 2 affidavits toward us. Each had a photo attached. Professional headshots. Clean-cut men in their 40s. Grandpa leaned forward. Never seen them. Neither have I. Patricia's expression was grim. Because they don't exist. I ran reverse image searches this morning. Caldwell's photo is stock photography. Torres is a stolen LinkedIn profile real estate agent in Florida with no Colorado connection. My hands curled into fists. Fabricated witnesses, Patricia continued. Forged signatures, fake photos. The affidavits are detailed specific dates, times, locations. Problem is, most of those dates William was with you, Richard, or me. We can prove he wasn't incompetent. When's the hearing? Patricia's face tightened. Tomorrow. Wednesday, 2 p.m. The air left the room. Tomorrow, I repeated. How? Emergency petition. Sarah claimed immediate risk William in danger from Richard's exploitation assets being misappropriated, urgent intervention required. Emergency petitions can be fast-tracked. Judge granted a hearing within 48 hours. Less than 30 hours. I said, checking my watch. 8:37. Yes. Patricia folded her hands. If the judge grants even temporary guardianship, Sarah gets control of William's person and property. Access accounts, medical decisions, sell assets. By the time we appeal, damage could be irreversible. Grandpa was quiet. Then, what do we do? File counter motions this morning. Emergency hearing to present evidence, fake witnesses, forged documents, FBI investigation, Jennifer Mason's confession hospital scheme. I'll also file for restraining order to prevent Sarah accessing accounts or property. She pulled out another folder. Already drafted. Just need signatures. And everything you have, recordings, emails, bank alerts, FBI contacts. We bury the judge in evidence before 2 p.m. tomorrow. Grandpa nodded. You'll have it. Patricia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. One more thing. The way she said it made my stomach drop. She turned her laptop toward us. Email on screen. Subject urgent. Location request. When I've been monitoring traffic related to your case, Patricia said carefully. Contact flagged this early this morning. From Brandon to a private investigator named Marcus Webb. 7:05 a.m. I leaned forward reading. Webb. Need William Stone's location immediately. Paying $10,000 cash for confirmed address and current whereabouts. Need this today. Extra fee for discretion. Keep this between us. No records, no questions. B. Blood drained from my face. Brandon's trying to find him, I said quietly. Physically. Appears so. Patricia's expression was stone. Marcus Webb is a PI in Aurora. Background checks, surveillance, skip tracing. Not reputable, not overtly criminal. The extra fee for discretion language is troubling. Suggests Brandon wants this off books. Why, though, I already knew. Because if guardianship fails, Grandpa said softly, and FBI is closing in, and the estate slips away, the only option left is to make me disappear. The words hung cold and brutal. We don't know that's his intent, Patricia said, but her tone wasn't ruling it out. But we take this seriously. I've contacted a security consultant on standby. What about Webb? I asked. What's he doing? Patricia shook her head. Don't know. He hasn't responded as far as I can tell. My phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. This is Marcus Webb. We need to talk. Meet me in 30 minutes. Parking garage where you are now. 3rd level northwest corner. Come alone. Bring William. I stared at the screen. What? Grandpa asked. I turned the phone. Patricia read it, face unreadable. He knows you're here, following us, or tracking you. Patricia stood, walked to the window. Could have your plate followed from your apartment. If Brandon hired him days ago to surveil William, then he knows where we live. Grandpa finished. Our routines. That we came here. I looked at the text. Come alone. Bring William. This could be a trap, Patricia said, or a warning. Grandpa's voice was quiet. If Webb wanted to hurt us, he could have done it already. He knows where Richard lives. Could have acted this morning. Instead, he's asking to meet. Maybe he wants to negotiate, I said. 10,000 is a lot. Maybe he's giving us a chance to outbid Brandon. Or second thoughts. Grandpa met my eyes. Maybe he realized Brandon's asking him to cross a line. Patricia turned from the window. You're not seriously considering this. We don't have a choice, Grandpa said. If Webb will talk, we need to hear it. He might have information Sarah's plans what Brandon's really doing. If he's warning us, we need to know what we're facing. I finished. Patricia's jaw tightened. If you go, I'm calling police, on standby. No. Grandpa shook his head. Webb sees police, he runs. We lose whatever he knows. Richard and I go. Listen. If it feels wrong, we leave. 30 minutes, 9:05. 28 minutes now. I don't like this, Patricia said. Neither do I admitted. But he's right. Patricia stared, then exhaled sharply. Fine. Keep phones on. I'll be listening. If I hear anything wrong, I'm sending every cop downtown to that garage. Grandpa stood. Fair enough. I pocketed my phone, feeling its weight like stone. 30 minutes. Third level, northwest corner. API who might be helping us or leading us somewhere we wouldn't walk away from. The parking garage was colder than I expected. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting sickly yellow pools across oil-stained concrete. Our footsteps echoed as we walked toward the northwest corner past empty spaces and scattered cars. Third level, isolated. Smart choice for a meeting you didn't want witnessed. He was waiting by a concrete pillar, hands in his jacket pockets. Late 40s, maybe 50. Short hair, military precision. Jeans, dark jacket boots. He didn't move as we approached, just watched with the kind of stillness that comes from years of dangerous places. Mr. Stone, he said as we stopped 10 feet away. His voice was low, controlled. I'm Marcus Webb. What do you want? I asked. My hand was in my pocket phone recording Patricia listening on the other end. To warn you. Webb pulled his hands from his pockets slowly and held up his phone. Brandon Mitchell contacted me 4 days ago. Surveillance job. Follow William Stone report on his routine's locations. Standard work. I took it. Grandpa's face showed nothing, but I felt the tension radiating off him. Then this morning, Webb tapped his screen, turned it toward us. 7:05 a.m. I stepped closer and read the message. Webb need. William Stone's location immediately. Paying $10,000 cash for confirmed address and current whereabouts. Need this today. Extra fee for discretion, no records, no questions. B. The same message Patricia had shown us. I didn't respond, Webb said. $10,000 is a lot of money, but I don't help people get hurt. That message wasn't about surveillance anymore, so you ignored him, Grandpa said quietly. I ignored him. Webb scrolled to the next message. 20 minutes later, he sent this. Webb $20,000. Cash. Today, just need location. B. $20,000. Ma still didn't respond, Webb said. At that point, I knew Mitchell was desperate, so I kept monitoring. He scrolled again, stopped on a message, and turned the screen toward us. 8:43 a.m. Brandon sent this to a different number. someone else. I read it. Need alternative solution. Subject is 86 isolated mobile. Full service package. Timeline 24 to 48 hours. Payment on completion. My blood went cold. What's a full service package? I asked, though part of me already knew. Webb's eyes met mine. It's what people call it when they want someone dead and gone. Not just killed, disposed of. No body, no evidence, no questions. The garage seemed to tilt. Brandon hired a hitman, Grandpa said steadily, though his hand tightened on his cane. He contacted one, Webb corrected. I don't know if the contract's been accepted, but the fact that he reached out means he knows how to access that world. I felt like I couldn't breathe. We'd been dealing with fraud, forgery, legal schemes. Not this. Why are you telling us? I asked. Webb pocketed his phone. I'm a veteran. Army 2 tours, Iraq, 1 Afghanistan. I became a PI to help people not hurt them. When I saw that message, I couldn't walk away. He pulled out a small flip phone, basic cheap, the kind you buy at convenience stores with cash. Our burner phone, he said, holding it out. Untraceable. No records. My number's programmed in. If you need to reach me without Mitchell knowing, use this. Don't use your regular phone. He might have access to your location data. I took it. It felt light, almost insignificant. You need to disappear, Webb said. Not permanently, but for the next 48 hours. Get somewhere safe. Alert the authorities. And don't trust anyone in his circle. We have a guardianship hearing tomorrow, Grandpa said. 2 p.m. If we don't show, Sarah wins by default. Webb's jaw tightened. If you show up and someone's waiting, you don't get a chance to appeal? He's right, I said, turning to Grandpa. We can't. We're not running. Grandpa's voice cut through the cold air like a blade. We're going to Evergreen. I stared at him. That's 40 acres of isolated mountain property. If someone's coming, then they'll come on my ground. Grandpa's eyes were hard. I've lived on that land for 30 years. I know every trail, every access road, every blind spot. In Denver, we're targets. At Evergreen, I set the rules. Webb studied him. You have security there. Not professional, Grandpa admitted. But I know local law enforcement. Sheriff Bradford's been patrolling that area for 20 years. No, call him, Webb said. Now, get a deputy posted. If Mitchell's hired someone, they'll scope it first. If they see law enforcement presence, they might back off. Or they'll wait, I said. Possibly. But at least you'll have warning. Grandpa pulled out his phone and scrolled through contacts. I'm calling Bradford. Webb nodded. I'm done here. I'm closing the Mitchell case, refunding his retainer, burning my notes. I don't want any part of this. Thank you, I said. He looked at me. Don't thank me. Just stay alive. And if you need to reach me, he gestured at the burner, use that. Not your regular line. He turned and walked away. 30 seconds later, a car engine started on the lower level. Then silence. Grandpa pressed his phone to his ear. Bradford, it's William Stone. I need a favor. I listened as he explained carefully, without panic, that there'd been threats related to a family legal matter. That he was driving to Evergreen. That he'd appreciate a security check, maybe patrol swing-bys over the next couple days. Thank you, Jim. I owe you. He ended the call. Bradford's sending a deputy within the hour, Grandpa said. Perimeter check increased patrols on Elk Ridge Road. And then what? Grandpa looked at me. Then we drive up there. We secure the property. We wait for tomorrow's hearing. And if anyone comes looking, his expression was cold, harder than I'd ever seen. They'll find out I don't go quietly. I looked at the burner phone in my hand. At my father, 86 years old, planning to face down a hired killer. We should call the FBI, I said. We will, from Evergreen, once we're secure. Right now, we move. He was already walking toward our car cane, tapping against concrete shoulders straight. I followed, pocketing both phones, wondering if we were walking into safety or a trap. Either way, we were going to Evergreen. The gate was open, not wide, just enough for a vehicle to slip through. The heavy iron gate at the Evergreen property entrance hung at an angle that was wrong. I slowed the car as we approached in the late morning light. The padlock had been pried open. Metal twisted paint scraped the mechanism, hanging useless. "Someone's been here," I said quietly. Grandpa leaned forward. "Keep driving, slowly." I eased through the gate and up the gravel drive. Fresh tire tracks cut through the gravel, not ours. Wide tread, heavy vehicle, maybe hours old. I parked near the front porch. The house looked intact, but as I walked closer, I saw the damage. The window beside the front door frame splintered, wood chipped. Someone had tried to pry it open and failed. They didn't get in," Grandpa said, running his hand along the frame. "But they tried." I took photos. Gate, tire tracks, window, evidence. Inside the house was cold, but undisturbed. No broken glass, no ransacked rooms. Grandpa went straight to the security panel in the hallway. He pulled up the footage log, scrolling through timestamps. "There," he said. "Yesterday, Monday, 2:12 p.m. The screen showed the front of the house. A dark blue pickup pulled into frame, no plates visible. 2 men got out, Brandon, and a second man, taller, broader, maybe late 30s. Baseball cap, sunglasses, dark jacket, professional. The second man pulled a pry bar from his jacket and worked the window methodically, testing the lock. Brandon stood behind him, hands in pockets, nervous. After 3 minutes, the man stepped back and shook his head. He wasn't getting in without breaking glass and triggering alarms. They got back in the truck and drove away. Timestamp 2:27 p.m. Yesterday afternoon," I said, "while we were with Patricia in Denver." "He was scoping," Grandpa said quietly. "And when that failed, he hired the professional." I thought of Marcus Webb's warning, the 24 to 48-hour timeline. "I'm calling Bradford." Sheriff Tom Bradford arrived in 15 minutes. He was mid-50s, lean and weathered, with 30 years of mountain law enforcement in his face. He knew Grandpa well enough to skip small talk. "Show me." We walked him through it. Gate, tire tracks, window, security footage. He watched it twice. "You know the man with Mitchell?" he asked. "No," Grandpa said. "My professional. Didn't break the window because that would trigger your alarm." Bradford shook his head. "No clear face, shot no plates. I'll file a report." "There's more," I said carefully. "We received a warning this morning from a private investigator named Marcus Webb. He said Brandon contacted someone about a contract, a violent one, 24 to 48-hour timeline." Bradford's expression hardened. "Webb have proof, screenshots, recordings, anything I can use." I hesitated. "He showed us the messages on his phone, but he wouldn't send copies. Said he was worried about legal exposure. He took Mitchell's money, initially did surveillance work. He's trying to stay out of it." Bradford's jaw tightened. "So what I've got is hearsay from a PI who won't testify, and video of an attempted break-in that didn't succeed." He looked at Grandpa. "William, I believe you. I know you and I know you wouldn't lie about something like this. But without hard evidence, no threatening messages, I can verify, no witness willing to go on record, I can't get a warrant. I can't make arrests on rumors from the underground." "I understand," Grandpa said quietly. Bradford pulled out his phone, made a call. "Jenkins, it's Bradford. I need you to add Elk Ridge Road to your patrol route for the next 72 hours. Every 2 hours, swing by 4250, do a slow pass check for unfamiliar vehicles. If you see anything, and I mean anything, call me directly." He paused. "Yeah, it's serious. Stone family situation. Just trust me on this." He ended the call and looked at us. "I'm putting extra patrols on this road. Every 2 hours minimum. If someone shows up, we'll know. And if you see or hear anything at all, you call me, not dispatch. Me. He wrote his cell number on the back of his card and handed it to Grandpa. I'll do everything I can within the law, William, but I need you to understand. I can't post a deputy here full-time without evidence of an imminent crime. I know, Grandpa said, and I appreciate what you're doing. Bradford looked between us. You two be careful. Lock everything. Keep your phones charged. And if Marcus Webb changes his mind and wants to give me those screenshots, you tell him I'll protect his identity as much as the law allows. He left at 1:30. We spent the rest of the afternoon securing the property, checking locks, testing alarms, verifying cameras. By 7 p.m., the sun had dropped behind the mountains, and the temperature had fallen into the 40s. We made coffee, turned on lights, and sat down in the living room. The sealed envelope sat on the coffee table between us, cream-colored, thick, wax seal. It's time, Grandpa said quietly. He picked up the envelope, cracked the seal, and pulled out 2 documents. The first was a will, last will and testament of William Charles Stone, dated October 8th, 2024. October 8th. The same day as the hospital scheme. William Charles Stone left his entire estate to Richard Michael Stone. Everything. Evergreen, the downtown building, all assets. To Sarah Elizabeth Stone, he left $1. October 8th. I said. You knew she'd try something that day. We knew, Grandpa said. Margaret and I. He pulled out the second document, Exhibit A. Predicted actions. July 2024. Guardianship petition incompetency. Failed. September 15th, 2024. Fraudulent death certificate bribery. Failed. October 8th, 2024. Hospital POA forgery. Failed. October 14th, 2024. Property fraud, fake witnesses. Pending. Anticipated escalation. Physical threat, coercion, violence. Every attack. Listed, predicted, dated. Margaret wrote this 2 years before she died, Grandpa said quietly. She saw the pattern, so we made a plan. I stared at the page, at my wife's predictions playing out exactly as she'd foreseen. She protected us. She protected you, Grandpa corrected gently. The motion sensor alarm beeped. We both froze. Grandpa stood and walked to the security monitor. The screen showed the driveway camera in infrared. A vehicle was approaching. Slowly. Lights off. Timestamp 11:23 p.m. Grandpa's hand tightened on his cane. It begins, he said quietly. I reached for the light switch and killed the living room lights. If you're still here, comment I'm here, so I know you're staying with me. And tell me this, if you were in my place knowing a direct confrontation was coming, would you leave to stay safe, or stay and face whatever showed up next? One quick note before we continue, the next part of this story includes some dramatized elements for storytelling and reflection. A few details may not be entirely real. If you'd rather stop here, feel free to do so. The sedan rolled up the driveway with its lights off, gravel crunching under the tires. Dark, hard to tell the color in the infrared glow of the security monitor. It stopped 30 yards from the house. 2 doors opened. Sarah. Brandon. Brandon reached into the back seat and pulled out bolt cutters. They're going for the shed, Grandpa said quietly. His hand was tight on his cane. The storage shed sat 50 yards behind the house where Grandpa kept a fireproof safe with documents, property deeds, trust papers, LLC formation documents. I'm going out, I said. I'm recording. Grandpa held up his phone camera app open. Everything they say. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The October cold hit sharp and thin. Sarah and Brandon were halfway to the shed when my flashlight beam caught them. They froze. Sarah, I said. She turned, shielding her eyes. "Get out of my way, Dad." "No." She walked toward me, Brandon behind her. Up close, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Brandon was worse, unshaven, hoodie up, gripping the bolt cutters. "This is private property," I said. "You're trespassing." "This is family property," Sarah shot back. "And it belongs to me." "It doesn't." "The building." Her voice rose sharp. 1450 17th Street. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" I didn't answer. "I found Mom's papers 6 months ago. In her desk. Tax documents. LLC filings. Rental statements. $80,000 a month, Dad. 80,000. She was shouting now. $15 million, and you were just going to keep it. Cut me out completely. By trying to steal it, I said. By forging documents, by bribing nurses. I was protecting what should be mine. It was never yours." Brandon stepped forward. A tire iron was in his hand, now heavy steel rod. "Step aside." "You want to add assault," I said. "The FBI already has you for wire fraud. Now you want to threaten me with a weapon." "I'm not going to prison," Brandon said, but his voice shook. He raised the tire iron. Not a full swing, a threatening gesture. I grabbed his wrist. We struggled for maybe 5 seconds before a voice cut through. "That's enough." Grandpa stepped onto the porch, phone held up, red recording light blinking. "Every word," Grandpa said calmly. "Every threat. On video. The FBI will get a copy by morning." Brandon dropped the tire iron. It clanged on gravel. Sarah made a sound, half sob, half scream, and whirled toward Grandpa. "You did this," she said, voice breaking. "You poisoned him against me, you and that woman he married. Mom was weak. She wasted her life taking care of everyone else. She gave up. She died without fighting." The words hit like a fist. I couldn't breathe. "You don't deserve any of it." She was crying now, ugly and desperate. "I worked for this. I planned. I stayed when I could have left. I earned that money, and you both just sit there acting like you're better than me, like you're so righteous when you don't even see what's happening." "I see exactly what's in front of me," I said quietly. Sarah stopped mid-breath. "Dad knew you'd say that," I continued. "About Mom. About her being weak. About giving up." Sarah's face went still. "Mom told him you would. Years ago. She said when you finally showed who you really are, when you ran out of options, you'd attack her memory. You'd call her weak. That's not..." "She wrote it down," I said. "In her journal. She predicted everything you'd say, everything you'd do." Sarah's mouth opened. Closed. "What journal?" Behind me, tires crunched on gravel. Sheriff Bradford's cruiser rolled up, lights off. He got out, hand on his radio. "Richard, William, everything all right?" "We're fine, Tom," Grandpa called. "But we've got 2 trespassers. One threatened Richard with a weapon. It's all on video." Bradford's eyes moved to the tire iron, then to Brandon, then Sarah. "Ma'am, sir, I need you to put your hands where I can see them." "This is a family matter," Sarah said, desperate. "We were just talking, ma'am, hands." Bradford cuffed Brandon first. "You have the right to remain silent." Then Sarah. Sarah didn't resist, just stared at me as Bradford guided her toward the cruiser. When he opened the rear door, she finally spoke. "What journal?" Barely a whisper. I didn't answer. Bradford put them both in the cruiser. Through the window, I could see Sarah's face illuminated by dashboard lights. Her lips were moving, forming the same two words over and over. What journal, Bradford came back. I'm going to need statements, and that video. You'll have it, Grandpa said. He was coming down the porch steps now, moving slowly. He looked exhausted, 86 years old, and it showed. But in his free hand, he carried something else. A small leather-bound notebook, brown, worn at the edges. The cover was embossed with initials I recognized. M.S. Margaret Stone. Grandpa met my eyes, said nothing, just held up the journal. In the cruiser, Sarah was still mouthing the words. What journal she'd never know. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. But I would. 2 a.m. The deputies had left. The house was quiet except for the hum of the security system and the occasional creak of old wood settling. Grandpa sat across from me at the kitchen table. Between us, a small leather-bound notebook. The initials M.S. embossed in fading gold on the cover. Margaret's journal. He'd been carrying it since we left Denver. Through the courthouse, the confrontation in the driveway, the arrests. He'd kept it close, never mentioned it, never opened it, until now. Why didn't you show me this before? I asked quietly. 3 years, and you never said anything. Grandpa's hands rested on the worn leather cover. His eyes were tired but steady. Because Margaret made me promise, he said. On her deathbed. She made me swear I wouldn't give this to you until your eyes were fully open. I stared at him. What does that mean? It means she knew you. His voice was gentle but firm. She knew that if I showed you this journal a year ago or 2 years ago, you would have tried to protect Sarah. You would have confronted her, tried to fix it, given her a chance to explain. Of course I would have, I said. She's my daughter. And that's exactly why Margaret waited. Grandpa tapped the journal. If you'd confronted Sarah early, she would have destroyed the evidence, erased her search history, burned documents, coached. Brandon disappeared the jewelry. She would have cried, apologized, blamed her debts, or her marriage, or her desperation, and you would have forgiven her. Because that's who you are. My throat tightened. Margaret knew that. Grandpa continued. She knew you'd need to see it with your own eyes. Not predictions, not warnings, the actual crimes. The hospital, the banks, the courtroom. She knew you needed to watch Sarah try to destroy us before you'd believe she was capable of it. He slid the journal toward me. So she made me wait. Made me watch you suffer through every attack, every lie, every betrayal, until the moment you finally understood who Sarah had become. That's when I was allowed to show you this. His voice softened. Margaret called it the golden moment. The moment when truth could finally take root because denial had been burned away. I looked down at the journal. My hands were shaking. Open it, Grandpa said. I did. March 15th, 2020. S asked me about the life insurance policy today. Not about my health. Not about treatment options. Just how much is it worth? And who's the beneficiary? R didn't notice. I did. May 8th, 2020. The gold bracelet and pearl necklace are gone. S offered to help me search the pawn shops. She's the one who took them. R is too trusting to see it. July 22nd, 2020. Found S's search history on the shared iPad. Fraudulent power of attorney. Elder incapacity laws. How to prove incompetence. Took screenshots. Saved them in an encrypted folder. She's planning something. September 10th, 2020. Told William everything today. We've started building the plan. Recordings, documentation, FBI contacts. I won't be here to protect R when this happens. William will have to do it. May 14th, 2021. 1 week left, maybe less. The hospice nurse says my liver is failing faster than expected. S came by today and asked about the will, about probate procedures, about how long it takes to execute an estate. She's counting the days. She's not grieving. She's waiting. May 18th, 2021. Final entry. I'm afraid, not of dying. I've made my peace with that. I'm afraid of what S will do after I'm gone. I've seen the pattern since she was a child. The stolen Christmas money when she was 12. The forged permission slips in high school. The lies about college expenses. It's always been there. I just didn't want to see it. But I see it now. And I've done everything I can to protect the people I love. William, keep your promise. Wait for the golden moment. Don't let R forgive her too soon. Richard, this isn't your fault. You loved her the way a father should. She chose this path, not you. I love you both. M. I read the last entry 3 times. Then I set the journal down, pressed my hands against my eyes, and broke. For the first time since Margaret died, I cried. Not the controlled, dignified tears of a funeral. Deep, raw sobs that shook my chest and left me gasping. Grandpa didn't move, didn't speak. Just sat there steady and silent the way he'd been for 3 years. When I finally looked up, the sky outside the window was turning gray. Dawn was coming. She saved us, I whispered. Grandpa nodded. She did. I looked at the journal one more time, at Margaret's handwriting. Her predictions, her love woven through every warning. The golden moment. She'd been right to wait. 1:47 Wednesday afternoon, I walked into the Denver probate court with Grandpa at my side. Patricia Anderson moved beside us, her leather briefcase gripped tight. Courtroom 3 stood open at the end of the hall. Sarah sat at the defense table, dressed in a gray suit. Her right ankle showed the black GPS monitor she'd made bail this morning, but remained under home confinement. Her attorney, Marcus Hunt, sat beside her, his expression tight. Sarah didn't look at me as we took our seats. At 2 o'clock, Judge Linda Morrison entered. The gavel came down once. We're here for the emergency guardianship petition in the matter of William Charles Stone. Ms. Stone is the petitioner. Patricia stood. Your Honor, we represent Mr. William Stone and Mr. Richard Stone. We oppose this petition and move to present evidence that it was filed under fraudulent pretenses. Judge Morrison nodded. Mr. Hunt, call your first witness. And we call Robert Caldwell. A man in his 40s walked to the stand, swore the oath, and sat down. Hunt asked him softball questions. Had he observed William Stone appearing confused, unable to recall family members' names? Caldwell answered yes to everything. Patricia stood for cross-examination. Mr. Caldwell, can you confirm your current address? He hesitated. 1247 Blake Street, Denver. Patricia opened a folder. That's the address in your affidavit. However, public records show no Robert Caldwell matching your description at that address. She pressed a button. The projection screen lit up with Caldwell's face beside reverse image search results. Stock photo. Shutterstock ID 473829110. Model name Jake Renfro, Orlando, Florida. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Patricia continued. Did you receive $500 via Venmo from Sarah Stone on October 13th? The man's face went pale. I was hired to play a role. By whom? By Ms. Stone. She told me what to say. Judge Morrison's gavel came down hard. This witness is dismissed and will be referred to the DA for perjury. Mr. Hunt, do you have other witnesses? Michael Torres, Your Honor. Patricia repeated the process. LinkedIn profile stolen from a Florida real estate agent, payment receipt for $500, admission of being hired to lie. Judge Morrison's expression darkened. Call Mr. William Stone. Grandpa walked to the stand, his movement steady. He placed his hand on the Bible and spoke the oath clearly. Mr. Stone, can you tell the court your full name and date of birth? William Charles Stone. Born March 7, 1938, 86 years old. Where do you live? 4250 Elk Ridge Road, Evergreen, Colorado. I've owned that property for 42 years. Can you describe your daily routine? Grandpa leaned forward. I wake at 5:30 most mornings. I make coffee, read the Denver Post, check my email and financial accounts. I manage a commercial property downtown 1450 17th Street, which generates approximately $80,000 in monthly rental income. I review tenant reports and coordinate with my property manager. 3 days a week, I meet my son Richard for breakfast. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I volunteer at the VA hospital. Patricia walked him through the timeline where he'd been on October 10th, his medical history, his financial competence. Every answer was detailed and delivered without hesitation. Marcus Hunt stood for cross-examination, but had nothing to challenge. No further questions. Judge Morrison looked at Patricia. Any other witnesses? Yes, Your Honor. Brandon Mitchell under immunity agreement with the district attorney's office. Sarah's head snapped up. Brandon walked through the side door flanked by federal agents. He wore an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed. He took the stand and avoided looking at Sarah. Patricia connected her phone to the audio system. Mr. Mitchell, is this your voice? She pressed play. Brandon's voice filled the room. You said to do it. You told me to call the banks. Then Sarah's voice. That was your plan, Brandon. Don't you dare. The life insurance, the property, the fake death certificate that was all you. The recording cut off. Patricia looked at Brandon. When was this recorded? Tuesday morning, 7:12 a.m. Did you at Ms. Stone's direction contact 3 banks claiming William Stone had died? Yes. Audintre, did you hire Jennifer Mason to file a fraudulent death certificate? Yes. Sarah paid her $5,000. Chartitum. Did you forge a power of attorney document dated October 10th? Yes. Sarah shot to her feet. You lying! Judge Morrison's gavel came down. Miss Stone, sit down and be silent, or I will have you removed. Sarah's attorney pulled her back, but her face was twisted with rage. Patricia played more recordings. Sarah discussing the downtown property, Sarah instructing Brandon to find someone who can make the old man disappear. Sarah laughing about Margaret's death. She died weak. She died like a coward. The courtroom was silent. Judge Morrison removed her glasses. I've heard enough. The petition for guardianship is denied. Mr. Stone is clearly competent and has been the victim of coordinated fraud. She looked at Sarah. I am referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Charges will include elder exploitation, wire fraud, conspiracy, and perjury. Potential sentencing guidelines suggest 5 to 7 years in federal prison. Based on the evidence, I am revoking your bail. Bailiff, take Ms. Stone into custody. 2 officers moved toward Sarah. She stood slowly, her face pale. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. They cuffed her hands and led her toward the door. As she passed our table, she looked at me. Her lips moved silently. What journal? Then she was gone. I stood in the empty hallway 10 minutes later. Patricia promised to send copies of the court order by end of business. Grandpa stood beside me, his face unreadable. In his left hand, he held a small leather-bound notebook. The initials MS were embossed in fading gold on the cover. Margaret's journal, the one Sarah would never read. The courthouse steps were chaos. I pushed through the glass doors with Grandpa at my side, Patricia a step behind, and the wall of noise hit us like a physical force. Cameras, microphones shouted questions overlapping into an incomprehensible roar. Mr. Stone, how does it feel to know your daughter tried to steal your inheritance? Was this about money or revenge? Patricia raised one hand. No comment at this time. All questions should be directed to our office in writing. She guided us toward the curb where her car was parked. A reporter shoved a microphone close to Grandpa's face. Mr. Stone, do you believe your granddaughter should go to prison? Grandpa didn't break stride. Patricia opened the back door and we slid inside. The door shut, muffling the noise. That'll be on the evening news, Patricia said. I'll send a written statement by 5. I nodded, but I wasn't really listening. My hands were shaking. Grandpa's hand settled over mine. Steady, warm. Patricia glanced at us in the mirror. The criminal trial won't start for a few months, probably February or March. Brandon's cooperation bought him a plea deal, probation, restitution, 5 years supervised release. No prison time, but he'll be a convicted felon. She paused. Sarah's facing 5 to 7 years if convicted. The recordings seal it. Her public defender will probably push for a plea, but I don't see the DA offering anything under 4 years. Good, I said quietly. She dropped us off at a small cafe 6 blocks from the courthouse, Odessa. A quiet place with dark wood booths and jazz playing low. Grandpa and I sat in the back corner. I ordered coffee I didn't drink. He ordered tea he didn't touch. We sat in silence for 10 minutes. Then the door opened and I looked up. Daniel. My son stood in the doorway scanning the room until his eyes found mine. He was 38 now, wearing a charcoal sweater and jeans, his dark hair showing the first threads of gray at the temples. He walked toward us with the careful, deliberate gait I'd noticed over the past year, the early tremor in his left hand, mostly controlled by medication. I'd called him 2 days ago after the parking garage meeting with Marcus Webb. Told him everything. The hospital scheme, the fake death certificates, the guardianship petition. The hitman threat. He'd caught the next flight from Seattle. "Damn," he said quietly. "Grandpa." Grandpa gestured to the empty seat. "Sit down, Daniel." He did, folding his hands on the table. There was something in his expression, relief maybe, or guilt. "I saw the news," Daniel said. "About Sarah, about the trial." "It's over," I said. "She lost." "Good." He took a breath. "I need to tell you something. I should have told you months ago." Grandpa's gaze sharpened. "What happened?" Daniel looked at me. "Sarah called me in July. Asked me to meet for lunch. Said she wanted to reconnect, talk about family. I hadn't spoken to her in 2 years, but I went." He paused. "She spent an hour asking questions about you, Dad. Your health, your finances, your routines. Then at the end, she made me an offer." My chest tightened. "What kind of offer?" "She said she was worried about you, that you'd been acting erratic, forgetting things. She said Grandpa was too old to see it clearly." Daniel's jaw worked. She offered me $500,000 to testify in a guardianship hearing that you were mentally unfit. Said it was for your own protection. $500,000. "What did you say?" I asked, though I already knew. "I told her to go to hell." Daniel's voice was flat. "I told her if she ever contacted me again, I'd go to the police. Then I called Grandpa." Grandpa nodded slowly. "August 2nd. You told me everything. I didn't know she'd go this far," Daniel said, looking at me. "I didn't know about the hospital, the death certificate, the banks. If I'd known, you did the right thing," I said. My voice sounded distant. "You warned us. You didn't take the money." I thought about it. His eyes were wet. For about 10 seconds I thought about it. The treatment costs, the uncertainty with Emma and Liam. I thought about it, Dad. I reached across the table and gripped his wrist. "But you didn't." He nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. We sat together for another 20 minutes, talking in low voices about the trial, about the estate, about Margaret's journal. Daniel asked to read it someday. I told him he could. When we finally stood to leave, Daniel pulled me into a hug. I held him tightly, feeling the faint tremor in his left arm, the weight of years and distance finally beginning to lift. Outside, the late afternoon sun slanted through the Denver skyline. Grandpa and I walked toward the parking garage in silence. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, Jefferson County Jail area code. "I need to see you, just once, please." I stared at the screen. Grandpa stopped beside me. Sarah. Yes. He didn't ask what it said. He just looked at me, his face calm, patient. Your choice, Richard, he said quietly. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. I looked at the message for a long time. Then I slipped the phone back into my pocket without answering. Let's go home, I said. Grandpa nodded. We walked to the car together, and I didn't look back. Thursday morning, 10 a.m. I sat in the visitation room at Jefferson County Detention Facility waiting for my daughter. The room was institutional beige cinder block walls, fluorescent lights, bolted tables. A corrections officer stood by the door, arms crossed, expressionless. The air smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. I'd left my phone and wallet in a locker, passed through a metal detector twice. Now I sat with my hands folded on the cold table, listening to the ventilation hum. I hadn't told Grandpa I was coming. I'd made the choice at 3 a.m, lying awake at Evergreen thinking about Margaret's journal, about the little girl who used to climb into my lap and beg me to read Goodnight Moon, about the woman who'd tried to have me declared incompetent. I needed to see her one last time. Not for her, for me. The door buzzed. Sarah walked through, escorted by an officer. She wore an orange jumpsuit with JCDF stenciled across the back. Her hands were cuffed in front wrists, red where the metal rubbed. No makeup, hair pulled back, face pale under harsh lights. She looked small. The officer locked one cuff to a metal loop on the table. 20 minutes. Sarah sat slowly. When she finally looked at me, her eyes were red-rimmed. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. I didn't answer. I never meant for it to go this far, she said. Brandon's debts, the foreclosure, the collectors calling every day. I just needed a way out. I thought if I could access part of the estate, we could fix everything. So you tried to have me declared incompetent. That was a mistake. I panicked. You hired fake witnesses, I said. You forged a power of attorney. You filed a fraudulent death certificate and paid a nurse $5,000 to lie. You called 3 banks claiming Grandpa was dead. She flinched with each word. You tried to bribe Daniel, I continued. $500,000 to testify against me in a guardianship hearing. Her face went pale. Daniel told you. He told Grandpa in August. That's when we knew it wasn't desperation. It was a plan. Sarah's hands tightened. The chain rattled. I wasn't thinking clearly. Margaret knew. The words hung in the air. Sarah's head came up slowly. What? I pulled a folded paper from my jacket, a photocopy of a journal entry. I placed it between us. She kept a journal. For 2 years before she died, she documented everything you did. Sarah stared at the page. March 15th, 2020. I said quietly. You asked about life insurance, how much, who the beneficiaries were. She wrote, S asked about the policy today, not about me, about the payout. Sarah's lips parted. May 8th, 2020. Your mother's gold bracelet and pearl necklace went missing. She wrote, the jewelry is gone. S offered to help look. She's the one who took it. Stop, Sarah whispered. July 22nd. She found your search history, fraudulent power of attorney, elder incapacity laws. She took screenshots, saved them. I leaned forward. She knew what you were planning 2 years before she died, and she spent those years building a case to protect us from you. Sarah's face crumpled. Tears spilled down her cheeks, running black with old mascara. She never said, because she loved you, but she loved me more. My throat tightened. And she made sure I'd be safe. Sarah sobbed, shoulders shaking. The officer by the door shifted, but didn't move closer. I waited until she looked up, face streaked with tears. The DA offered you a plea deal, I said. 18 months if you cooperate fully. Testify against Brandon's associates, turn over financial records, admit everything. If you go to trial, you could get 7 years. She nodded, voice hoarse. My lawyer told me, Grandpa and I won't oppose the plea. 18 months full cooperation, you'll be out by mid-2027. I held her gaze. But after that, you're done. No contact. No inheritance. No access to family accounts, properties, or trusts. Patricia is filing a restraining order that goes into effect when you're released. You violate it, you go back. Her breath hitched. Dad, please! This is the end, Sarah. You get 18 months instead of 7 years. That's all you get. Do you hate me? The question came out small, broken. I looked at her for a long time. The little girl who'd sat on my lap and read picture books. The teenager who'd painted her nails black and argued about curfew. The woman who'd stood beside me at Margaret's funeral and held my hand while they lowered the casket. I didn't know who that person was anymore. I don't know what I feel, I said finally. But I know I can't trust you. Margaret saw what you were becoming and tried to warn me, and I didn't listen. She spent the last 2 years of her life building a plan to protect us from you. My voice cracked. And that breaks my heart more than anything you've done. Sarah's face twisted. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I stood. The chair scraped against concrete. Take the plea deal, Sarah. Serve your time. Start over somewhere else, but don't come back to us. We're done. I turned toward the door. Dad. I stopped, but didn't turn around. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't answer. The door buzzed open. I walked through, collected my belongings, and stepped outside into cold October sunlight. The air was thin and clean. I took a deep breath. It was over. Really over. I got in my car and drove back to Evergreen. The road wound through the foothills, pine trees, dark against the blue sky. The higher I climbed, the clearer the air became. By the time I reached Elk Ridge Road, the sun was high and bright. Grandpa was waiting on the porch when I pulled up. He didn't ask where I'd been. He just handed me a cup of coffee, still hot, and sat down beside me in one of the old wooden chairs Margaret had loved. We watched the mountains in silence. After a long time, he said quietly, "Did it help?" I thought about Sarah's tears, her apologies, the weight of Margaret's journal entries between us, about the finality of walking out that door. I don't know, I said honestly. But I needed to do it. He nodded slowly. That's enough then. We sat there until the sun started to drop behind the peaks, painting the sky orange and pink. The temperature fell and the air turned sharp and cold, but neither of us moved. It was enough. January 2026 brought a brutal cold back to the mountain. Snow blanketed Elk Ridge Road in thick drifts, and the wildflowers Margaret loved, the columbine, the Indian paintbrush, the lupine, were buried deep under white frost. I stood on the back deck at Evergreen, with a cup of coffee, watching the steam rise into the thin, freezing air. The temperature hovered around 15 degrees, but the sky was clear and brilliant blue. The kind of winter day that made the Rockies look like a postcard. Inside, through the glass door behind me, I could hear Daniel's kids laughing. Emma was 10 now, curled up on the couch with a book about horses. Liam was 7, sprawled on the floor, building an elaborate castle out of wooden blocks. Daniel sat in the armchair near the fireplace, his left hand resting on the armrest. The tremor was barely visible today. The new medication had slowed the progression of his Parkinson's significantly. Not stopped it, but slowed it. That was enough. 3 months had passed since the trial. 3 months since Sarah had been led out of the Denver probate courtroom in handcuffs, her face pale and hollow, her eyes darting back to me one last time before the bailiff closed the door. 3 months since I'd watched my daughter disappear into the system she'd tried so hard to manipulate. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, saw Patricia Anderson's name on the screen. Patricia, Richard, I wanted to give you the final update. Everything's locked in now, no loose ends. I leaned against the deck railing. What's locked in? The trust restructure, the property transfers, all the court orders. It's complete. You're the primary beneficiary of the Stone Family Trust. Daniel is the secondary. The downtown property at 17th Street, The Evergreen Estate Stone Mountain Properties, LLC. All of it is protected under ironclad legal structures. Sarah can't contest any of it even after she's released. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. Thank you, Patricia. Sarah's sentence is official. She continued. 18 months at the Colorado Women's Correctional Facility in Canyon City. With good behavior, she'll be out in about a year, early 2027. The restraining order is permanent. 500 feet minimum distance from you, Daniel, William, and the grandchildren. If she violates it, she goes straight back to prison. And Brandon Mitchell completed his probation in December. Moved to Arizona last month. His ex-wife has full custody of their son. He filed for bankruptcy 2 weeks ago. As far as we're concerned, he's a ghost. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. 1 more year until Sarah walked free. 1 more year until the restraining order became the only thing standing between us and whatever she might try next. You doing okay, Richard? Patricia's voice softened. I know this hasn't been easy. I'm doing better than I thought I would, I said honestly. Some days are harder than others, but yeah, I think I'm okay. Good. Call me if you need anything, anytime. She hung up. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and looked out at the mountains. Snow-covered peaks stretched endlessly under the winter sun, silent and unchanging. Margaret had loved this view. She used to say the mountains were proof that some things endured no matter what storms came through. I wished she could see it now. The letter had arrived 3 weeks ago. I'd found it in the mailbox at the end of the driveway, mixed in with a gas bill and a grocery store flyer. The return address was printed in small black letters: Colorado Women's Correctional Facility, Canyon City, Colorado 81215. My name and address were handwritten in careful, deliberate script. I'd known immediately who it was from. I'd brought it inside, set it on the kitchen counter, and walked away. For 3 weeks, I'd left it there. Unopened. Untouched. Just a pale rectangle of paper sitting on dark granite, a ghost I couldn't quite bring myself to confront. Daniel had asked about it once during his visit over Christmas. You gonna read that, Dad? I don't know, I'd said. He'd nodded and didn't push. That was Daniel, gentle, patient, never demanding answers I didn't have. Grandpa had never mentioned it at all. He'd seen it, of course, walked past it a dozen times, but he'd respected my silence. That was his way. He knew some decisions couldn't be rushed. Today, January 29th, 2026, I finally sat down at the kitchen table in the quiet of the early morning and opened it. Dad, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you should. But I need to say it anyway. I tried to destroy you. I tried to take everything you and Grandpa built, everything Mom protected, and I tried to rip it apart for money, for debts that weren't even really yours to worry about, for a life I thought I deserved, but never earned. I told myself I was desperate, that Brandon's gambling debts were crushing us, that the foreclosure notices were piling up, that I didn't have a choice. But that's a lie. I had a choice every single day, and I chose wrong. I chose to lie. I chose to manipulate. I chose to hurt the people who loved me most. Mom knew. I read the journal entries you mentioned at the jail. My lawyer got copies as part of the discovery process. She saw what I was becoming years before I did. She saw the pattern, the escalation, the danger, and she tried to protect you from me. She loved me. I know she did. But she loved you more, and she was right to. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve that. I'm not asking you to visit me or to write back or to let me into your life when I get out next year. I know that door is closed. I know I closed it myself. I just need you to know that I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know it doesn't fix anything, doesn't undo the damage, doesn't erase the pain. But it's true. I hope you and Grandpa are okay. I hope Daniel is okay. I hope Emma and Liam grow up happy and safe, far away from the mess I made. I won't contact you again after this. That's a promise. I'm sorry, Dad. Sarah, I read it 3 times. The first time my hands shook. The second time my eyes blurred. The third time I just sat there in the silence staring at her handwriting. The careful loops, the neat margins, the way she signed her name at the bottom. My daughter, the little girl who used to climb into my lap and beg me to read Goodnight Moon one more time. The teenager who'd cried in my arms after her first heartbreak. The woman who'd stood beside me at Margaret's funeral and held my hand while they lowered the casket into the ground. When had she changed? Or had she always been this way? And I'd just been too blind to see it. I folded the letter carefully, slipped it back into the envelope, and set it on the counter. I didn't reply. The next morning I drove to Fairmount Cemetery in Denver. The roads were clear, the sky pale gray and heavy with the promise of more snow. I parked near the entrance and walked the familiar path to Margaret's grave, my boots crunching through the frozen grass. Her headstone was simple gray granite engraved with her name, her dates, and the line Grandpa and I had chosen together, beloved wife, mother, protector. I knelt and brushed the snow from the top of the stone. Then I placed a small bundle of dried wildflowers, columbine, and paintbrush against the base. I'd picked them last summer and pressed them in one of Margaret's old books. She would have liked that. Your plan worked, I said quietly. Everyone's safe. The estate's protected. Daniel's doing well, his medication is working. Emma and Liam are happy. They ask about you sometimes. The wind moved through the bare trees, cold and sharp. Sarah's in prison. She'll be out early next year, but she's not coming back. The restraining order is permanent. She wrote me a letter a few weeks ago, said she was sorry. I paused, my throat tight. I don't know if I'll ever forgive her. I don't know if I even want to. But I don't hate her. I think that's what you'd want. You always said hate was just love that had nowhere to go. So I'm letting it go. Not forgiving, just letting go. I stayed for another 10 minutes, then stood and walked back to the car. That evening, Grandpa and I sat on the back deck as the sun set behind the mountains. The temperature had dropped into single digits, and our breath came out in white clouds. Coffee steamed in our mugs, but we didn't drink. We just sat there side by side, watching the sky turn from blue to pink to deep purple. After a long silence, Grandpa reached over and squeezed my shoulder once. I nodded. Sarah had wanted wealth. She'd gotten consequences. I'd wanted the truth. I'd gotten peace. The mountains didn't change. People did. Or they didn't. Either way, the mountains stood. We sat there until the stars came out, 2 men who'd learned that family wasn't who you shared blood with. It was who chose to stay. Sarah's letter sat on the kitchen counter, read but unanswered. Maybe someday I'd write back. Maybe not. But today, January 29th, 2026, this moment was enough. The coffee, the mountains, my father beside me. Daniel's laughter echoing from inside the house where he was helping Emma and Liam make hot chocolate. Margaret would have called it grace. I called it home. Looking back at everything that happened, I realized this story isn't just about family betrayal. It's about trust, vigilance, and the devastating cost of greed. Don't be like me. I ignored the warning signs. When Margaret told me she was worried about Sarah, I dismissed it as paranoia. I thought love and blood were enough to protect us. I was wrong. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other wound, because it comes from the people you're supposed to trust most. Here's what I learned. Protect what matters. Margaret knew that wealth without protection is just bait for those who haven't earned it. She prepared evidence, built safeguards, and trusted God to guide us through the storm. The Lord says in Proverbs 22:3, "The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty." Margaret was prudent. I was simple until she saved me. Grandpa stories like ours aren't rare. Elder exploitation is real. Families turn on each other for money every day. But Grandpa stories can also be stories of resilience, wisdom, and faith. My father, 86 years old, stood firm when everything fell apart. He trusted God's protection, documented the truth, and refused to be a victim. These grandpa stories remind us that age brings wisdom and sometimes the courage to fight back. God doesn't promise us safety from betrayal, but He promises us strength to survive it. He carried us through, and for that I'm grateful. If you're facing family betrayal, don't ignore it. Document everything. Seek legal help. Trust God. And protect the people who truly love you, because blood doesn't always mean loyalty. Final note. This story contains dramatized elements created for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the lessons and messages are entirely valuable. If this style isn't for you, that's okay. Please seek content that better suits your needs.